I never believed in fate until the morning I spilled coffee all over myself, and the new barista downstairs handed me a towel with the kind of smile that makes you forget you're standing there, soaked and ridiculous. His name was Declan. I know because it was written on his name tag in careful handwriting, and I stared at it longer than was probably normal while he dabbed at my shirt with napkins, apologizing even though I'd been the one who bumped into the counter like an idiot. That was 3 months ago. 3 months of me becoming the kind of person who suddenly needs coffee every single morning, sometimes twice a day, when I used to just make instant at home. 3 months of learning that Declan takes his breaks at 2:15, that he has this habit of tucking his hair behind his left ear when he's concentrating, and that his laugh sounds like something I'd want to record and keep in my pocket for bad days. I live in a cramped studio apartment on the 3rd floor of a building that's seen better decades. The cafe, Morningside Grounds, sits right below me. I can hear the espresso machine through my floorboards if I'm quiet enough. Sometimes I lie in bed on my days off and listen to the muffled sounds of life happening below, wondering if Declan's voice is part of that distant murmur. My name's Aaron. I'm 28. I work remotely as a graphic designer, and until Declan showed up in my life, my most exciting daily decision was whether to have cereal or toast for breakfast. I'd dated a little, nothing serious. A few guys from apps, a couple of awkward setups from well-meaning friends. Nothing that stuck, nothing that made my heart do this stupid fluttering thing it does now every time I push open the cafe door and see him behind the counter. The thing is, I'm not even sure if Declan's gay. I hope he is. God, do I hope. But I'm too scared to do anything about it beyond ordering increasingly complicated drinks and trying to be charming, which mostly means I end up saying things like nice weather when it's clearly pouring rain outside. He's always kind about it, though. Always smiles like I've said something worth smiling at. It was a Tuesday when everything changed. I remember because Tuesdays are my grocery days, and I'd just gotten back from the store, arms full of bags, when I saw Declan sitting on the steps outside our building, not in his work apron, just sitting there in jeans and a gray hoodie, looking at his phone with this expression I couldn't quite read. I almost didn't say anything, almost walked right past him like a coward. But then he looked up, and our eyes met, and I couldn't just pretend I hadn't seen him. "Hey," I said, brilliant conversationalist that I am. "You live here?" He shook his head, and something in my chest deflated. "No, I needed some air, rough day." I should have said something normal like, "I'm sorry," or "I hope tomorrow's better." Instead, I heard myself say, "Want to come up for tea? I make a decent cup, and you look like you could use one." The surprise on his face mirrored my own internal shock. But then he smiled, that same smile that had been ruining my productivity for months, and said, Yeah, I'd like that." My apartment was a mess. I hadn't expected company, especially not the company I'd been daydreaming about for weeks. There were design sketches scattered across my desk, dishes in the sink, and a pile of laundry on the chair that I quickly shoved into my closet, while Declan politely pretended not to notice. He sat on my couch, the only real piece of furniture I own besides my bed and desk, and I busied myself with the kettle, hyper-aware of every sound I was making, the water running, the click of the stove, my own breathing, which seemed unreasonably loud. "I quit my other job today," Declan said suddenly, and I almost dropped the mugs I was holding. "Your other job?" I turned to face him. I hadn't known he had another job. He nodded, running his hand through his hair. It was longer than I'd realized, curling slightly at the ends. "I was working as a junior architect at Morrison & Fields, downtown. Been there for 2 years. Good pay, benefits, the whole package. My parents were so proud when I got hired." I brought the mugs over, handed him one, and sat down on the opposite end of the couch, maintaining what I hoped was a respectful distance. "And you quit?" "I quit." He laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Gave my notice this morning. My boss thought I was insane. My mom called me 3 times. My dad sent me a text in all caps, which, if you knew my dad, you'd know is basically equivalent to him screaming." "Why'd you do it?" I asked, even though part of me was terrified of the answer. Declan looked at me then, really looked at me, and I felt something shift in the air between us. "Because I was miserable. Because I was spending 40 hours a week in a glass tower designing buildings I didn't care about for clients who didn't care about me, and then I'd come to the cafe for my second shift and actually feel alive for the first time all day. That's not sustainable, you know?" I did know. I'd left a soul-crushing job at an advertising agency 3 years ago to go freelance, and it was the best decision I'd ever made, even if it meant eating ramen more often than I'd like to admit. "The cafe pays minimum wage," Declan continued. "I'll have to pick up more shifts, maybe find roommates, definitely say goodbye to my savings account, but I'll also get to actually sleep at night without my jaw aching from grinding my teeth. So there's that." "That's brave," I said quietly. "Really brave." He shook his head. "It's not brave. It's probably stupid. But I'm 26, and if I don't do something stupid and possibly regrettable now, when will I?" We talked for hours. The tea went cold, and I made more. The afternoon light faded into evening, and I turned on the lamp in the corner, the one that casts everything in warm amber. Declan told me about his family, about how he'd always loved drawing buildings as a kid, about how the reality of architecture had slowly crushed that love into something unrecognizable. I told him about my own journey, about the panic attacks I used to get on Sunday nights, about how I still sometimes wake up afraid I'll have to go back to that life. "Can I tell you something weird?" Declan asked as the clock on my wall ticked past 9. We'd ordered pizza at some point, and the empty box sat on the coffee table between us. "Please," I said. "I'm pretty sure this whole evening has been comfortably weird already." He smiled at that, but it was nervous. "You're part of the reason I quit." My heart stopped. Actually, stopped. I was pretty sure I needed medical attention. "Not in a creepy way," he added quickly. "Or I hope not in a creepy way. It's just, you come into the cafe every day and you're always friendly, and you have this way of talking about your work like it actually matters to you. Like you're not just going through the motions." And I started to realize that I knew more about you from our 3-minute conversations over coffee orders than I knew about most of my coworkers I'd spent 2 years with. That seemed wrong. That seemed like a sign. I didn't know what to say. My mind was racing, trying to process what he was telling me, trying to figure out if this meant what I desperately hoped it meant. "And also," Declan said, his voice softer now, "you have really kind eyes, and I'm maybe a little bit in love with the way you always say thank you like you really mean it. And I've been trying to figure out for weeks if you're gay or just Canadian-level polite." I laughed. Actually laughed, loud and startled and genuine. "I'm not Canadian. I'm gay, very gay, extremely gay, and I've been coming to that cafe twice a day because you work there. Not because I have a caffeine addiction, although I'm pretty sure I've developed one at this point." The relief on his face was beautiful. "Oh, thank God." I was like 70% sure, but that 30% was really stressing me out. "For the record," I said, feeling braver than I had in months, maybe years, "I think you have the best smile I've ever seen, and I've been practicing what I'd say to you if I ever got up the courage to ask you out." I had a whole speech planned. It was going to be very smooth and impressive. "What was the speech?" Declan asked, and he was closer now, I realized. When had he gotten closer? "I don't remember," I admitted. "My brain just completely emptied." "That's okay," he said. "I like you better without a script, anyway." He kissed me then, gentle and questioning. and I kissed him back with 3 months of pent-up longing and hope. His hand came up to cup my face, and I felt like every romantic cliché I'd ever rolled my eyes at suddenly made perfect sense. Fireworks, butterflies, the whole world narrowing down to just this moment, this person, this feeling of everything finally clicking into place. When we pulled apart, Declan was smiling, and I was probably smiling like an idiot, and neither of us seemed to know what to say. "So," I finally managed, "want to stay for a movie or something?" "Or something," he agreed. That was 4 months ago. 4 months of Declan working longer shifts at the cafe, of me timing my breaks to match his, of learning how to be with someone in a way I'd never quite managed before. 4 months of him slowly moving his things into my tiny apartment, one box at a time, until we had to have a serious conversation about storage solutions and whether we needed 2 sets of dishes. His parents came around eventually. His mom still asks when he's going to use his architecture degree, but she says it with less disappointment now, more resignation. His dad sent him money last month with a note that said, "For emergencies," or "Rent. Love you, kiddo." Declan cried when he read it, and I held him and felt grateful for parents who love their kids, even when they don't understand their choices. The cafe promoted him to shift supervisor. It's not architect money, but it comes with a small raise and the satisfaction of actually enjoying what he does. He's started sketching again in his free time, not buildings, but people, scenes, moments. He's good, really good. I've been encouraging him to do something with it, maybe sell prints online or take commissions, but he says he's not ready yet. That's okay. We have time. I've started making coffee at home again, now that I don't need an excuse to see Declan, but I still go down to the cafe most mornings, sit at the corner table by the window, and watch him work. He always looks up and winks when he catches me staring. The other baristas have started teasing him about it, calling me his groupie, and he just grins and doesn't deny it. Some nights when we're lying in bed and the sounds of the city are muffled through the walls, Declan will turn to me and say something like, "I'm glad I quit," or "best decision I ever made." And I know he's not just talking about the job. He's talking about choosing this life, this tiny apartment, this risk. He's talking about choosing me. I think about that a lot. About how we make hundreds of choices every day, and most of them don't matter much in the grand scheme of things. But some of them, the scary ones, the ones that don't make sense on paper, those are the ones that change everything. Declan chose to walk away from security and expectations. He chose to trust that there was something better waiting for him, even if he couldn't see exactly what it was. I'm not saying I'm what he was looking for. I'm just a guy with a messy apartment and a mediocre tea-making ability and a tendency to overthink everything. But I'm also the guy who gets to wake up next to him every morning, who gets to hear about his dreams and fears, and the weird customer who ordered a cappuccino with 7 shots of espresso. I'm the guy he chose, and he's the guy I choose every single day. Last week, Declan started talking about maybe going back to school, not for architecture, but for art. He's been researching programs, looking at portfolios, getting excited in a way I haven't seen before. It'll mean student loans and a tight budget and probably some very creative meal planning. But when he talks about it, his whole face lights up, and I know we'll figure it out. This morning, I came down to the cafe like always, and Declan had drawn a little heart in the foam of my latte. It's something he's been practicing, latte art, watching YouTube videos on his breaks. This was his first successful one. It was lopsided and a little messy, but it was perfect. "What do you think?" he asked, anxious and proud at the same time. "I think you're amazing," I said, and I meant it in every possible way. He leaned across the counter and kissed me, quick and sweet, and someone in line behind me made an approving noise. We broke apart, both blushing, and he handed me my coffee with an exaggerated formal bow that made me laugh. I took my usual table by the window and watched him work. This person who took a job at the cafe below my apartment and quit the one that paid more. This person who chose uncertainty and authenticity over comfort and expectations. This person who, by some miracle I still don't fully understand, chose me too. My phone buzzed with a text from my mom. Bringing Declan to Thanksgiving this year? I looked up at Declan, caught his eye, and smiled. He smiled back, that same smile that started all of this, and I typed out my response. Wouldn't miss it. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent to our small story. But inside the cafe, inside this moment, everything felt exactly right. Not perfect. We're both too messy and human for perfect, but right, real, worth every risk and scary choice that brought us here. I sipped my latte, the lopsided heart already dissolving into the coffee, and thought about how the best things in life often come from the decisions that don't make sense to anyone else. The ones that look like steps backward but feel like leaps forward. The ones that choose happiness over security, authenticity over approval, love over fear. Declan took a job at the cafe below my apartment and quit the one that paid more. And in doing so, he gave us both something more valuable than any paycheck could provide. He gave us a chance, and we took it together. Total_char_count 16,247